Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of Firing Line Radio Show. This is Philip Naiman. I hope you're having a not so soggy Saturday wherever you are. And this particular show, I want to take this time at the start of this year to go over a few things that need to be addressed. And, we have all kinds of things that are going on in our economy, things are going on in our politics, but we also have things going on in our judicial system. And that is something that has really caused some problems. Those of us in California, Arizona, you've got the same things going on there. We really need to take a look at what's going on. So it is my pleasure to have Stanford graduate DA Mike Hestrin, Riverside County DA, who is a great supporter of law enforcement, a great supporter of the Second Amendment. He works hand in hand with Chad Bianco, and he's an awesome person, and he's out there fighting the fight. And I think that one of the things that's very important is that we realize how law enforcement actually works. Now, I'm going to give my layman's understanding of it, and then Mike can correct me because he actually knows what he's talking about. Crime happens. You have the investigators, which are the police department. They usually don't stop it in progress. Sometimes they do, but they come up after the fact. They investigate, they create a case, they bring that to the district attorney. The district attorney looks at it and says, yes, we have valid information here that this looks like the perpetrator. We should arrest him and go forward. They go with that. Then they goes into the judicial system. So the law enforcement side is really the catching the crooks, the putting the case together. And then we run into the judicial system. Mike, how am I doing so far?
Pretty good. I'd give you an A. There's a couple little things I would correct.
Well, let's correct them.
Okay. So one of the things that is important and impressive about the American legal system, let's call it the justice system, is that the power of the police and the power of the prosecutors is completely separated. So the power to arrest somebody lies completely with the police. So they have to have probable cause to arrest somebody. So they make an arrest. So prosecutors can't make arrests. I can't even order someone to make an arrest. So a police officer, a sworn police officer, has to have probable cause that a crime has been committed. They make that decision, and they make that decision really independently of the prosecutor, which is another check and balance that was put into our Constitution.
That's a pretty important thing I missed. I'd say I got a B-, not an A. You're being too nice on that. So that is an important distinction. So they make the arrest, and then it goes into the system. So in California,
they submit it. They submit it to the DA's office for charging of criminal matters. So okay. That's the part where we take over. If we decide to charge it and we have to have it evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, then we submit it to the courts. So it's really a 3-step process.
Right. So when an arrest is made in California, the favorite one here seems to be shoplifting. Somebody steals a Glock 19 off the counter and runs away with it. So they're caught down the street, stealing a firearm in the state of California that's worth less than $900. What happens to them in that case?
Well, unfortunately, in California, a few years ago, it was 2014, actually, the law changed so that when a criminal steals anything less than $950 in value, it's a misdemeanor.
So you can steal a Glock, just not a SIG. Just for those of you out there, just write this down. Take notes.
Anything under $950 is a misdemeanor, but even worse than that, it's a misdemeanor no matter how many times the person gets caught and prosecuted. So somebody could go into a store, steal a gun, 50 times in a row, get caught 50 times in a row. As long as that gun's under $950 in value, I can only ever charge them with a misdemeanor.
And there's no cumulative effect.
No cumulative effect. There's no incentive for the criminal to change their criminal behavior, long term.
So what happens with a misdemeanor? So let's say that, said person steals the Glock, runs down the street, is arrested. What happens at that point for him?
Well, they're going to be arrested, and very likely in California, they're going to be site released, which means they don't even get taken to the jail. That's because it is a misdemeanor and can only be a misdemeanor, but our jails are completely full based on another law that came down in California, AB 109, where the state of California sent their prison inmates to the local jails. Our local jails are completely impacted and full. And so most folks that steal and commit a misdemeanor, they never see any jail time.
So basically, the entire penalty for somebody who tried to steal something, obviously, if you're stealing from a gun store, there's other penalties you may incur. But somebody who went and stole something from an auto parts store, right? He grabs a stereo and he's running out the door, Best Buy or one of these poor places like that. The worst thing that's going to happen to them is they're going to get their pockets turned out at the curb, and whatever paraphernalia is in their pockets are going to probably be forfeit. Other than that, they get a ticket. Please come to court.
Right. They get it. They get a ticket. Please come to court. And I know you'll probably be shocked. Many of them don't show up to court.
No, stop.
They don't come to court, and they just accumulate these warrants. It's terribly broken. I know we're both being sarcastic and facetious, but it is terribly broken. And there's a real world impact to that. I speak all the time to business owners who are fleeing California, and a lot of the big box stores, they can't afford the losses they're taking. They're taking massive losses when it comes to theft.
So a local store in Redlands, California, this was a couple of years ago. When I lived in Redlands, we were there, the night manager, and somebody's tried stealing a cart full of stuff, and we grabbed this cart back from them. And she's this young, small, Latina girl, and she's in tears. I don't know why they have her working nights, but anyway, she's maybe all of 5'2". And she says that every day they lose in alcohol alone about $1,000. Now that's one store. And here's where people don't understand. It's like, oh, he stole a beer. Who cares, right? You get that mentality in some people, a very dangerous, wrong mentality, I would say. But here's what happens. Vaughn's is not going to go out of business, or Safeway as they now are. What they have to do is, if in that one store they have $365,000 of liquor losses every single year, they have to raise their prices $365,000 on everything else just to stay in business with the same profit margin. So who bought that Cretin, that Jack Daniels running out the door? You did. The rest of the shoppers here are paying for that. This system that Gavin Newsom and the other people in charge have instilled, and Jerry Brown too, they have destroyed our policing system. The fact that the law basically doesn't have any teeth. You may have a few stories of yourself to share. Maybe you've seen some of this too, right?
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. You're everything you're describing is exactly right. The one little twist I would put on it is that, the vast majority of businesses are not, big corporations. They're mom and pop stores, and they do go out of business. They are also getting killed with theft. I mean, the thieves don't care. They'll go into, small liquor store and clean them out as well. And they're facing the same dilemma. The problem is, they have such tight margins that they end up going out of business or trying to leave the state. So, California is in rough shape. We are in a real crisis with the business atmosphere and just kind of the lawlessness that's running rampant on our streets.
Yeah, it's free range looting. There literally is daytime looting all the time. Now, sometimes, somebody could be armed. If you're on your own property, if you're in your own store, you may be armed to protect your life, but you can't, my understanding, and please correct everybody if I'm wrong on this, is you cannot defend property with lethal force.
That's correct. That's correct. You can use lethal force only to defend your life or the life of someone else.
So if they're running out with a packet of jujubes, you can't
No.
What about just in the leg? Can you shoot them in the leg?
No, you can't use lethal force. Nope.
Dang.
So you're correct.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why they go in boldly. They'll go in unarmed, non-threatening, just grabbing their stuff. They don't say anything to anybody, walk out, no threats. And there's not a thing you can do. And even I think if you were to put your hands on them, now you have other issues, right?
Right. I mean, a lot of places, when I first started as a prosecutor, there were, grocery stores and department stores. They had loss prevention officers. We used to call them in our trials when we actually used to do trials for theft. Someone committed a theft in Riverside County, they go up on trial and go into jail.
Now you're dating yourself, Mike.
I know, I've been around a long time, but what was interesting is back then they had loss prevention officers, and my understanding is a lot of places don't even bother anymore. They just say, you know what, we're not going to hire loss prevention because we can't prevent the loss, so we're just going to write it off, send it to our insurance. But again, as you point out, that's also not a solution because we end up paying more in prices
Yeah, the
we
insurance
pay for
goes
the
up because of the
right.
losses that are incurred. It keeps it's round and round and round. Folks, this is Philip Naiman, Firing Line Radio Show. I'm here with the District Attorney for Riverside County, who does a great job in a very difficult circumstance. You can get to their website at rivcoda.org. That's riversidecountyda.org if you need to see what's going on there. We're going to talk about some of the broken systems. They're intentionally broken. Now, those of you who are in Arizona, I know you're saying, hey, I got away from this, but I'm telling you, you need to listen. So folks, we'll be right back after this. Philip Naiman, whoever I am, firinglineradio.com. Okay, we're going to pick up session 2 here. They'll break this up on the air when it goes.
Okay.
Ready? Hey folks, welcome back to Firing Line Radio Show. Philip Naiman here, your happy host, but we're talking about a very difficult subject. And what we're talking about today is the crime wave, the free range felons, the daytime looting that is going on 24/7. Well, daytime looting isn't going on 24/7, but some kind of looting is going on 24/7 here. And we're all sick of it. And so I have Riverside County District Attorney Mike Hestrin on, and Mike is a veteran prosecutor. He's had over 100 trials, 20 murder cases, I think 8 death penalty cases. Of course, those are also a thing of the past, are they not, in California?
Still on the books. It's 7. I did 7 death penalty cases, but it's still on the books. It's
No one can hope, there's one more.
still the law of the land. We just have a governor that says he's going to refuse to enforce the law while he's governor. So that's where we're at.
So I know that you're in a political position. I am not. And this governor, Gavinus, who thinks he's the emperor of California, he has done everything he can to destroy everything that made this country or the state great. My understanding as we speak, there are plans on the books to close 3 more state prisons, one of them being Pelican Bay. Pelican Bay used to be, for those of you who are, Attica, New York, the worst place you can go, right? Pelican Bay in California was like, it was the bottom of the sewer pit where all the scum went. Well, they're going to be closing that. So what does that mean? That means that those people will be pushed down into county jails. How does that make your life a little harder, DA Hestrin?
No, this is a disaster. So the folks that run the state of California, they're progressives, and progressives live in a delusional world where if you close prisons, you actually can pretend that there's less crime, and that's not the reality. Obviously, a population the size of California, we need a certain number of prisons. There's just going to be a certain number of people that they have to be locked up.
They have the mindset, right? Gavin Newsom has the mindset, if he closes his eyes, he's invisible. Something
like that. Yeah. I've always said it's akin to saying, hey, there's too many sick people, so let's close some hospitals. Well, that doesn't
redefine sickness.
Right. It doesn't make the sick people go away. It doesn't make them healed. You're pretending that, you're certainly going to have less patients because you have less hospitals. And that's kind of where California's at. We want to incarcerate less people. So we're just doing it artificially by closing prisons, where the right way to deal with high incarceration problem is to bring crime down. Right. And we know how to bring crime down. We just don't have people willing to do it.
Well, so it seems to me, when you see somebody committing a heinous felony, it's probably not their first rodeo, right? Most people don't start with armed robbery, shooting 3 witnesses, right? That seems to be the culmination of 20 years of really, really bad decision-making that should have been stopped along the way. And so we do have lifetime criminals. This is what they do. They do not want to get a job at Amazon warehouse. If they did, they just steal from it. They don't want a job there. They want to continue to do what they're doing. And you have to keep society safe by taking those people away from the population. Now, I like, the 6 foot in the ditch thing. I'm okay with that. Now, you're the district attorney. You can't talk about that. But, if a man has a lifetime of crime and only a lifetime of crime ahead of him, he should never be released. We just lost a Riverside County deputy, I think about 2 weeks ago, in this exact situation that never should have happened. Would you speak a little bit about that, kind of the background?
Yeah, it's a tragedy and a heartbreak that's really fresh for us here in Riverside County. We lost a deputy sheriff who was conducting a traffic stop when a repeat felon pulled a gun and shot him and killed him during that traffic stop. That individual should never have been on the streets. He was already a convicted third striker prior to that day. And third strikers under California law should be in prison for their life in prison. That's what the law says. And it didn't happen. The system failed Deputy Cordero. It failed his family. It failed our community. And we're heartbroken right now. We're dealing with the tragedy. The funeral is tomorrow. And but there's going to be a reckoning. There has to be, because the people of this community have had it. They're outraged.
So if I do something against the law, or policy, if this is policy, this is procedure, and I'm an employee of the state, and I break that, I take on personal liability. So if a state employee, like, I don't know, let's just say a Superior Court judge, decides not to hold that person accountable and puts them out on the street, why do they not have accountability for that? Why do they not have liability for the actions of that person that they put back on the street? Because frankly, they have blood on their hands. And my understanding is that's not the first time it's happened in that courtroom.
Yeah, that I don't know. I don't know that.
Once is too many.
Well, the judge is not from Riverside County, from a neighboring county. So I'm not familiar with the judge. I know that the judge was a former prosecutor, actually. All I can tell you is that in this case, this individual, there's no way he should have been on the street to kill Deputy Cordero that day. He should have been behind bars based on
based on the law.
And based on his career as a criminal. He was a career criminal. He was, more than a decade of committing very violent, very serious crimes. And we do have a tool. It's called the 3 strikes law to put people like that in prison and keep the rest of us safe. And it just didn't happen. It failed. It just failed. The system failed. And we've got to go back and say, how did the system fail? And how do we make sure it doesn't happen again?
Well, you're probably catching on here kind of quick. I have my own ideas on how to fix things. When I'm emperor, it's going to be a good week. But anyway, I've seen parole boards where they have let people out time and time and time again. And those people come out and commit fresh crimes, which commit a complete new list of victims, broken lives, broken bodies, broken dreams that these horrible people have taken from innocent people. And I've never understood why there hasn't been any kind of at least civil liability for a parole board. If you believe that person should be on the street, then you sign on it. You're civilly liable for whatever they do. If you're not willing to sign for that, why would you put them back on the street to cause new victims? Why would you take that chance? Why would you? Well, I'm going to give him another chance. It's not your game. He doesn't live in your neighborhood. Give him your spare bedroom if you want to give him another chance. Let's go that route. But to be a bleeding heart on somebody else's life is vastly unfair.
I think what happens is a lot of what's happening in California politics, a lot of the philosophy that judges adhere to, and many folks in California that have this kind of progressive ideology when it comes to criminal justice and the justice system in general, is, again, they don't want to face reality. They see that they see folks that are criminals, and they see in them a victim. They see in them someone who needs another chance, and that's great if you're talking about someone who's young and committed a minor offense. When you're talking about that individual, I'm on your side. Hey, let's get this guy rehabilitated. We don't want to put him in prison where he learns how to be a hardened criminal. But you've got people that they've shown over and over again that they have no regard for the law, no regard for human life and for any decency. Once they've crossed that line, then we have to remember that we're not being compassionate by letting them out or being lenient. We're actually being cruel to the next victim and the next family that has to suffer what's going to happen. And it's going to happen. It's not rocket science. When you let a career criminal out and you're lenient on them, you've just bought another victim, a lifetime of misery.
Yeah, it's what they do. And I think it's what you're correct. You're not helping the criminal. You're creating a new line of victims. You are just setting somebody else up for heartbreak, bodily damage, destruction, rape, arson, just the whole litany of all the great things in life, and it just drives us up the wall because we want to be law abiding citizens. Society only works because majority of us agree to play by the rules, right? We agree not to go in and steal everything at Best Buy. We agree not to go steal everything at Safeway or whatever it is. That's why society works. We have a small minority of super criminals that are committing the vast majority of all the crimes, and 3 strikes was designed to wipe it out. And it did. It worked extremely well for almost 20 years, dropped our crime rates super far down, but now they're just letting the problem prop back up again.
You make a great point. I want to emphasize it because I think nowadays people don't worry. Say people, a lot of folks in the media, they don't worry about facts. They just have their narrative. And what they tell the country, what they tell the people of this country is that, things like 3 strikes, it didn't work. It was counterproductive. And that is just nonsense. The data is clear. 3 strikes and putting the worst offenders in prison made our crime rates plummet in California.
Very good.
And I think
we have to take a break right here. Hold that thought. We're going to come right back. Philip Naiman, firinglineradio.com.
Hey, Philip, just real quick, my last name is Hestrin with an R. Hestrin.
I keep saying Hestin.
Hestin, yeah, it's okay.
R for Riverside.
Yes.
Sorry, buddy.
No problem.
Okay, I'll pick it up here. You got your thought right in there?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna jump right to it. Hey folks, Philip Naiman, Firing Line Radio Show, back here with Michael Hestrin, DA of Riverside County. We were just on a hot point there, had to take a stinking commercial. Sorry about that. Mike, will you pick it up real quick? You're talking about the media and the facts.
Well, I just was talking about the fact that, gets lost now that the 3 strikes effort, we brought the crime rate in California to historic lows. And, I love it when I see some supposed expert on TV and they say, well, crime was down to historic lows. We really don't know why that happened. And I laugh out loud because we do know why that happened. We made a concerted effort in this state to lock up the most dangerous criminals. We passed tough legislation on career criminals, on 3 strikers, on violent offenders, and it worked. And what happened, really, if you want to know what really happened, is the crime rate was so low that people forgot that they had to worry about crime. And so all of a sudden, when they forgot about that, then they started feeling bad for the offenders. And I get it. And, our prison population was high. And I do understand that's not ideal, but we had a very safe society.
Wait a second. Our prison population was high. And I didn't mean to cut you off and be that rude, but I am that rude. But the prison population was high because they quit building additional prisons as our population grew from 20 million to 38 million. They didn't have any more infrastructure.
That's right. And I would also note that our prison population is high, but not compared to the crime rate. So our crime rates are high in California and in the United States. So a lot of times, they want to compare to other countries that, it's not a fair comparison. So got to look at the crime rate. So we're driven by the criminality, and it's a fair response that government is going to incarcerate people dependent on the crime rates. If crime rates go up, yeah, guess what? You're going to have more people incarcerated.
So maybe we need to have this discussion with those people who feel that way. It's like, well, so what you're saying and then is we need to have a quota on criminals. So we're only going to prosecute the first 1,000 murders in California. Everything over that, hey, we've met a quota, so we just won't count them. I mean, the logic doesn't work. If there's been crime and violent crime, it needs to be addressed. You can't say, well, we're prosecuting too much of it. That doesn't make it go away.
That's right.
It's I don't know the planet that they live on. It's amazing to me because the same people are out there. Well, here's an incident I had this week. I was in Redlands at a store, and a free ranger was on the front doorstep of this business, sleeping in the rain with what looked like to be a machete, and so we called the police department, said, hey, you got your gentleman up here, and they knew who he was. His name was, I think, well, anyway, they recognized his name. They eventually caught him after, like he said, the 6th foot chase this month. Well, that tell you, this guy has a warrant out. He's arrested again. The resources of the police department chasing the same bonehead who's running around with a machete or a pointed stick or whatever he had 6 times in a month. What does that look like? 30 hours. That's probably 30 hours of labor to deal with this one idiot who should be in jail because he's a career criminal. It's one. There's thousands of them.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So one of the things that I always try to get the public to be clear on in terms of crime and how it actually gets enforced is it's not, crime is not evenly spread around the population. The vast majority of people in any community, even the hardest hit, so-called crime-ridden communities, the vast majority of the people living there are law abiding. They never get arrested. They follow the law. It's a small group of people that commit crimes over and over again. And that's why targeting them, the ones who commit crimes and locking them up, that's why it has a huge effect on the overall crime rate, because you're removing someone who has shown they're going to keep committing crimes over and over again. So,
yeah, even Joe Biden figured that out. He says, Corn Pop was a bad dude. If Joe Biden can figure that one out, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Corn Pop there. You don't have to comment on that. So, okay, so let's talk prison realignment.
Okay.
Realignment. Let's talk prison closing and free range felons and the 70,000 prisoners released by Gavin Newsom, Gavinus, and Jerry Brown.
So, it's part of a larger effort, and you've already touched on it during the show, and it's really called decarceration, and it's an effort to close our prisons, close our jails, get people out of our jails. So they're doing it in a couple of ways. They're changing the laws, they're closing prisons, and then they're supporting prosecutors who won't enforce the law. Oh. Right. So I've got a neighbor down here in Southern California, and I don't want to give him any publicity, but he just on his first day in office as elected DA said, these are the list of crimes I'm not going to prosecute. And, that's not our system. I don't get to make the law. I'm not an emperor. I'm a public servant. I'm a district attorney. I enforce the law as it's written. And that's our system. And that's what I signed up for. And if you raise your hand and take an oath to uphold the Constitution, that's what you're agreeing to live by. And so there's this new breed of prosecutors that don't want to do that and think they can pick and choose. So
I'm guessing George Soros did not fund your campaign.
No, he did not. No, I wouldn't take a nickel from that guy.
No.
So, so it's a multifaceted approach. It's they're working hard in Sacramento to change the laws and water down and take away the tools that we have to keep our communities safe. They're closing prisons. They're releasing prisoners from the prisons with new parole board. They're electing these.
Let's talk about that real quick, because here's something else that I think is devastating. So these parole boards, they come in and they say, why is this guy got 20 years for life? His last conviction was for he stole a car. Why? That's not violent. He just stole a car. Big deal. They recovered it. Well, yeah, it was pled down from a carjacking where he pistol whipped somebody, and the 14 other things he wasn't convicted on. They never bring those things into account. And just again, it's the pattern. I do investment services, and one of the things we do when we're charting, we're watching for patterns. The trend is your friend. Lots of things like that. And in real life, it does matter. And these people have the ability to neglect facts and just go off of whims. Like you said, the DA in LA that's had destroyed San Francisco was not happy with that, decided I should blow up Los Angeles too. He's heading south. San Diego's his next stop, so look out for you guys. But it's important that, we hold these people accountable. People on parole boards, they should be known who they are. When they release a felon who commits a crime, they should say, hey, the 4 out of 6 of you said this guy can go. This person has been harmed by your decision. You didn't have to let him go. You decided to. That judgment on your end caused this. You are directly involved in the mayhem caused by that free range felon you released.
Yeah. One thing your listeners might enjoy is that a few years ago, the law changed in California and allows for what's called elderly parole, right? So someone who's elderly can be released early, no matter what their sentence was. So you'll never guess what elderly is defined as in California.
65?
50 years old. So I'm elderly. So if I, here, look at me. Do I look like I would need to, be released, or that I could no longer pose a threat to the public? I mean, our system has become the butt of many jokes, and it's too bad.
I think it's important that you get to be released off of your life sentence while your victim's still alive.
Yeah, I mean, it's a broken system for sure.
I thought this was going to be a fun show. I don't know anymore.
No, whenever you ask the DA to come on, you're not going to get an uplifting.
You know what? It's not your fault, Mike. I know that you are. You're in there. You're fighting. You're doing what you can. As a matter of fact, we're going to bring this up on our last session here. We've talked about prison closings, the realignments, the I-Gavinus Emperor syndrome, where he's released. What is the total number of prisoners? It's closer to 70,000, isn't it, over the last several years?
I think so, yes.
70,000. That is the population of the city of Redlands, folks. That's twice the population of the city of Prescott, Arizona, in felons released from jail. How is that going to work in a state, right? Not to mention now prison guards got to go find a real job. It's not good all the way around. When we come back, I want to talk about what happened in Riverside County.
Okay.
The thousands of things that happen and why, and what we can do maybe in the future to get that corrected. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Folks, Philip Naiman, Firing Line Radio Show. Get our podcast at firinglineradio.com. You can also find out on our YouTube channel some of the stuff we have going on there. We are redoing our website that will have our vendor discounts next to the vendors. Somebody pointed it out. That's a good idea. Well, we're going to get that fixed too. Anyway, we'll be right back after this with DA Mike Hestrin, Riverside County. We'll be right back. Ready, boss?
Yep.
Hey, folks, Philip Naiman, Firing Line Radio Show here with Mike Hestrin, DA for Riverside County. I did mispronounce his name the first two segments. He was kind enough to bring that up for me. We got the R in there on the last two segments, R for Riverside. Hestrin, very good law enforcement guy, been a prosecutor for 20 plus years, almost 30 at this point in time, but we're not going to tell him your age there, Mike. Riverside County had a very unique thing. Many counties over the last couple of years had faced the same problem, but Riverside County in Southern California decided we have a unique solution to this problem of backlogged criminal courts. What happened?
So let me take you back a little bit. So over the time of the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns, the state, well, the county closed our courts, and it was really only a partial closure. And this is important. So they closed it as to trials because it was deemed that, it's too dangerous to bring jurors in and attorneys being face to face with one another. So very few trials happened. But what the intake part of the criminal justice system was still open. So police were still arresting criminals. We were still charging criminals with crimes. And then once they were charged, they'd go over to court and their case would be put off far into the future. And the idea was, at some point we'll be past this COVID emergency and we'll be able to reopen. Well, that was in effect for almost 2 years. So you can imagine the result of that. There was a huge backlog of cases pending trial. So in October of 2021, we were at 2,800 cases pending trial. That's not good. That's a high number. There were many other counties in California that had similar pending cases, called them backlogs.
So 2,800 is a number, but that's not relative to, it's not relative to anything to us. How many would you typically do in a month pre-COVID?
Well, no. So that was the backlog of cases that were set for trial. So that's not the number of cases that we normally would do in a month, but 2,800 cases set is a high number. So that means You've got 2,800 cases waiting to go to trial. They're all ready to go to trial. So normally, in a perfect world, you'd be caught up. There would be no backlog. So we were basically backlogged by 2,800. On October 7th, the time waiver, the waiver from the Supreme Court ended. And what I mean by that is typically, pre-COVID and now again, when someone's arrested, it starts a clock. So, there's time limits on prosecution. So those were all waived during COVID. So that's how we were able to put their cases off far into the future. We just said, hey, put your case, we'll hear your case whenever we can, and the time waivers are waived. Well, that all ended on October 7th. Our judges decided at that time to start doing a policy really of mass dismissals. So they started basically looking at how many courtrooms they had that day. If they had 3 courtrooms or 4 courtrooms, they would send the cases out, and the rest of them that were on calendar that day for trial, they just dismiss them. And we've been fighting against that. I think they're unjustified. They're not justified, I don't believe, by the law. We've challenged it. We've taken their ruling up to the appellate courts here in California. But there's another problem, and that is, aside from the legal problem, and that is that we've had now since October 1,000 criminal cases dismissed.
Wait,
and that is
only 1,000 so far.
So far, right? We're still climbing because it's happening every day. And so those are the vast majority of those cases are misdemeanors. We've had about 100 felony.
As we've said, a misdemeanor could be stealing $900 from something for the 47th time.
It
so
could
a misdemeanor in California is not like a jaywalking ticket, which, by the way, is no longer illegal because that's racist to jaywalk, or to hold somebody accountable for jaywalking. But the guy could have been arrested 50 times for $500 worth of theft for the 50th time, and it's a misdemeanor, and it gets thrown out. He's a career criminal.
Well, that's right. And not only that, I mean, misdemeanor cases, many of them that were dismissed were misdemeanor domestic violence, misdemeanor sexual battery, even some cases where, you have child victims, misdemeanor, annoying, and those kinds of things.
Or sometimes they're pled down to a misdemeanor to get them to go, right?
Well, I mean, right now, nothing's pleading in Riverside County because, defendants are looking to get their dismissal. So not much is pleading out right now.
Yeah, that was a great point you made. Can you go over that as to how that's been damaged now?
Yeah, so, typically someone's arrested. The vast majority of people that come into the criminal justice system are not career criminals. They're maybe like a DUI, someone had too much to drink. That's a real crime. I'm not diminishing it, but most of those folks that come in, they know they're guilty. They want to just, get the best deal they can. And so they plead out, they plea bargain with the prosecutor. That happens day in and day out all across the country, certainly all across our county. And that has stopped now because now that people get the idea that if at the end of the criminal process is going to be a dismissal, put yourself in their shoes. Why would you agree to anything?
Yeah,
and their attorneys are certainly the attorneys are certainly giving them, I think, the right advice, which is, hey, let's hold off here. Let's see if we can get a dismissal. We can angle for a dismissal. And so the system, it's finally balanced. And then when you upset that balance, it's not going to work. And that's what's happening here.
I think there was a case you were talking about where a judge decided he was going to open up a courtroom. You had like 8 or 10 cases that morning were ready to go, and they were all ready to try and get dismissed. But when the judge says, "Oh no, we're going to hear you all," 8 of them said, "We want to plea." Right?
That's right. It was just about right. So we had a day about a month ago where no dismissals were happening for whatever reason. The stars lined up. A judge came out from his chambers and said, "I have 3 courtrooms." There were actually 12 misdemeanor cases that were ready for that trial. And as you said, many of them were hoping for a dismissal. Judge came out in the afternoon and said, "I'm going to send 3 of you out," and went back in his chambers. Didn't say another word. Immediately, the defense attorneys grabbed their prosecutor who's in the room and said, "Hey, remember that deal that you offered me a couple months ago? I'll take that now." So it was just the prospect of going to trial that focused them and said, "You know what, I'll take that deal." And of the 12, 10 of them pled out. 1 of them continued to another time, and only 1 of them went to trial. So that's how our system's supposed to work.
Right. Exactly right. And the judges there's another problem when they dismiss the case, right? You can't come back later.
That's right. So felonies you can. So we can refile a felony one time. we get one refile, but misdemeanors, you can never refile them. So those cases are gone no matter what we do. So of the 1,000+ cases that have been dismissed, the vast majority of them are gone forever. But here's the interesting thing. Remember, I told you there were 2,800 cases backlogged, and these are numbers from about 10 days ago. So 2,800 we started with. The judges have dismissed 1,000 criminal cases. Our backlog is still at 2,300 right now, because the new cases coming in, they're not pleading it at all. So we're sort of
Yeah, they know there's a game there. Just hold
That's right.
tight. You can bluff in Riverside County and get away with it.
Yeah, so we're not making much progress here. We're going to continue to have a backlog until this policy of mass dismissal comes to an end.
How would you fix it? Here's your magic wand. There you go.
Right. So it's really not magic. So there have been other counties that have had to work through backlogs, and here's what they do. They bring in groups of retired judges to help out with the
Can
volume.
I volunteer? I could be a good judge. Really good.
They extend hours. They might have to work later into the night. Some of them have even said, we're going to come in on Saturdays and do Saturday court by Zoom. So that you, the attorney, you can stay home, but we're going to do it by Zoom. So it's those kinds of things. Look, I'm not here pretending that it's going to be easy. I'm not here pretending that, hey, this is nothing. It's just, business as usual. But what I am saying is that's why we get paid taxpayer money to do these jobs. We get paid.
Those victims need their voices heard.
That's right.
That's what this is about. And for 1,000, those pompous ass judges to push people off like that, it might irritate me a little bit, but I'm a very calm person.
No, I mean, you're right. It's totally unacceptable to say to someone who's been victimized, hey, I'm sorry, we just didn't have the resources to get to you. So you get no justice. The person who harmed you, they never see their day in court, and it's like it never happened. That is incredibly damaging to the criminal justice system as a whole. It undermines the public trust in prosecutors, in defense attorneys, in judges. And the minute you lose that public trust, you're asking for big trouble.
Yep, exactly right. Folks, I want to thank my very special guest, Mike Hestrin, DA for Riverside County. You can tell he's got a very difficult job. He does it very well. We want to pray for peace. We want to pray for more prisons. We want to pay for all the bad people to go into those prisons and frankly never come out. I'm okay with that. We can rehab them on the inside. They can make it a very pretty, nice place to live on the inside, away from the rest of us innocent people. I'm okay with that too. DA Mike Hestrin, thank you so much for what you do. Folks, if you want to find out more about the Riverside County DA and give them a shout out, some support, rivcoda.org. And of course, our podcasts are at firinglineradio.com. Have a great day. Stay dry. God bless. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. That was fun. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Great to meet you. And, if I can ever help you out another way, I'd be happy to.
I appreciate this. Will be this is going to air Saturday at 1:00 on AM 590. Okay. And you can get a podcast of it on our YouTube channel under Firing Line Radio or firinglineradio.com if you want to, tell your friends, whatever you like to do. You can use it any way you'd want.
All right. I appreciate it.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you for your time. God bless.
No problem. My pleasure. Bye-bye.